All right, welcome back to the ThisIsBS series, and I have a very important guest today. For those in the recruitment industry, you'd be very lucky to spend time with him, and I know I am. I have the one and only Greg Savage.
And excellent at BS, apparently.
Excellent, great at BS. That's exactly what I want to bring into it.
Yeah.
Only if you're talking about the Waratahs, that's the only point of that, so what you'd be fine. So currently dead last in the Super Rugby channel.
Actually, I'm glad you brought up rugby. Shall we talk about the Rugby World Cup, perhaps?
I would do that, but I'm too busy watching the 2011 and 2015 one. I'm too busy watching that.
Well, you might need to keep those in good condition because it might be a long time.
I wouldn't be surprised. Look, as much as I'd love to talk rugby, we're here to talk about some of the items for your BS. But first of all, why don't you tell the fantastic people at home, if they don't know about you, what you're all about?
So I've been in recruitment 40 years, which I know you're thinking is hard to believe given what you're looking at. But owning and running recruitment businesses obviously started as a recruiter, and it's a long period of time. So mostly I would sum it up by saying I built 3, maybe 4 recruitment companies. And in the last 6 or 7 years, I have acted as an advisor.
Yep.
And I find myself on the board of 12 recruitment companies, including the one we're at today, which is people to people. And so I'm in a very fortunate position where I tend to spend time with very passionate people I like, people who have done great things but want to take it to the next level. And I can sometimes help because I have made all the mistakes they're likely to make, and also got a few things right. And yet at the end of the meeting, I can go home and they've got to do the work. So it's an absolute perfect scenario.
I love that. Well, actually, I did the same thing after I went to your Savage Sales thing a few years back. I actually did more homework there than I've done in this job for a very long time. Actually, I've only belt in the recruitment industry, so.
Good to hear. Oh, by the way, when Ben came in this morning, he said he brought me a present and then he'd forgotten it. So that was a classy piece of work. It's what we've come to expect from the New Zealanders. I have a present for him, and here it actually is.
Look, I appreciate the present, because here's a present I actually want, and I'm not sure if you've been watching the series. I've had 5 people reject my present, and I'm sure Greg would have done the same as well, so I'm glad to have this.
I would like to have had the chance to reject it, but it didn't actually happen.
I'll tell you what, one day it's going to turn up on your doorstep, and you're going to ask me how the hell I got it to your house. You're going to ask about that. All right, cool. So, for those who know about the series and how we do things, you offer up 3 BS items, and we kind of go through them, and you provide solutions for that.
Yeah.
So let's just get straight into it. So what is your first BS you'd like to cover today?
Right, well, I've decided then to come up with a couple that are really set about the recruitment industry, particularly by clients and sometimes candidates, and then a couple later on that recruiters say about themselves, and they are total BS.
Yeah.
And the first one is recruiters don't provide good value, they're too expensive, their fees are too high. That is the biggest load of codswallop. And there are a couple of angles we need to tackle. And the first is that talent is the currency of wealth creation. We don't have manufacturing companies anymore. It's all about intellectual property, smart people who are going to drive your business forward. So there is pretty much nothing that an owner or a manager of a business can do that's going to drive their company forward faster than to hire good people. And the fact is, if they could hire good people themselves, then the recruitment industry wouldn't be worth $550 billion worldwide and growing at 10% a year, which it is. Notwithstanding the fact that every HR tech guy thinks he's going to destroy it tomorrow. It's not happening. So I think the first thing we've got to examine is finding people that you can't find yourselves is worth paying for. But there's a second part to it, Ben, which I'm happy to elaborate on if you'd like me to.
Absolutely.
Sure, there's some poor recruiters, there's poor lawyers, there's poor footballers, there's poor everything. But the majority of recruiters do provide a service that has value, and the proof of that is that they're still in existence because recruiters are typically paid on success. So if they didn't find clients' candidates, they wouldn't get paid. Unlike an accountant, an accountant doesn't average tax return, still get paid. Doctor doesn't make you well, still gets paid. Lawyer doesn't win your case, still gets paid. Whatever it might be, but in our industry you only get paid if you're successful, therefore that by definition means that we're coming up with talent. So that's the first point, but the second point is, and this is really goes to the crux of it, which is where, you talk about your series is called BS. This is like the platform upon which all BS in our industry is built, which is that clients are to blame for high recruitment fees.
Okay, so I'd like to dive into that a little bit in terms of that. So, of course, there are companies that will have fees at, say, 10%, others at 25%, right? So, can you kind of just go through how you think the client has affected that number or the style and how that's been approached?
Right, first of all, let's approach it from the recruiter's point of view. The recruiter can command his or her fee by providing the client something they can't get themselves. Recruitment is not a loved profession. It's a grudge purchase, typically, like many things. We don't go to the doctor because we like it. We need it, right? If a recruiter can provide something that a client can't find themselves, they will thrive. Now, the things that the client can't do themselves or find themselves is access to unique talent. That mean candidates they can't find through their own resources. And the second part of it is managing the process and getting the person to the hiring table and helping to affect a decision in the client's favor, which a recruiter does, and most clients don't recognize that. So that's the first thing. But the big thing, the secret, the big BS is clients blaming recruiters for high fees, 25%, which might in itself be quite worth it because we need the talent. But the reason recruiters' fees are the level they are is quite simply because most recruiters only get paid for a tiny fraction of the work they do. And I can explain why that's the client's fault in a moment.
Well, I thought just hearing that as well is a big part to it, is that when I did this conversation with Erin, she said sort of a similar thing in terms of like recruitment agencies vanishing. And I think, or going away and sort of tearing away. I think the big question that comes out of this is, why is it that talent acquisition then doesn't have the resources that a recruitment agency has when they themselves have a part of their corporate, they have a budget, stuff like that? Why is it that they need to go out to these recruitment agencies?
Because it's the power of a third-party agency who is independent. Of course, BHP, Telstra, whoever it might be, can build a massive talent acquisition team. And they could be very, very good at their job, but they can never be an unbiased agent acting in the candidate's best interest. How could they? They want the person to work for them.
Yeah, okay.
Right, but if I'm a good recruiter and you come to me, I can advise you based on your career aspirations that working for company A is going to suit you more than company B. Not only that, I can advocate for you in there, get you the opportunity and affect your career. So there will never be a time, in my view, you should never say never because the world changes so fast, but in the foreseeable future, I don't see the third-party agency industry under any threat whatsoever in terms of totally disappearing. It will be heavily affected by technology and social mores and a whole lot of things. But good recruiters who provide that secret blend between the best use of technology and human influencing skills and the ability to find talent will thrive.
Yeah, so I think that's also very interesting in terms of you talking about, just going a little bit back on the point of the high agency fees as well. Do you find that talent acquisition, or like sort of like the companies that they're working for, actually start to force an undercut between each different agency just to get that business on?
Oh, they do that, but they definitely do that, and they think they're smart about doing it. And I've been in conferences, I speak at conferences all over the world, sometimes I sit in the back, and I've seen HR directors stand up and triumphantly say they've saved $100,000 or $1 million in agency fees by getting agencies to compete. It is laughable. They are getting the second-class candidates. Is it so hard to understand that if I'm a recruiter and you're a guy with great talent, I know that's a long stretch, we've got to really use our imaginations, but let's say you are a guy with great talent and I've got a client looking for your skills, and I've got this client here who's paying me 25% and that client paying me 15%. Where do you think you're going?
Yeah, exactly.
So, but here's the big point that we need to get. Companies think it's smart to give their job orders out in competition to get agencies to compete against each other, which is what you're sort of driving at and saying, I'm going to give this job order for this UX designer to 3 agencies because I'll make them compete. Some sort of Darwinian theory of the survival of the fittest. It's the dumbest thing you can do, because actually if you do that, agencies pay very little attention to those orders and they put their effort into those clients who give them a commitment. And in actual fact, let's say average agency fees in Australia are, I'll just make something up, 18%.
Yep.
If it were possible, and this is a pipe dream, for every client to give every order exclusively to one recruiter, let's say, we could halve our fees and would make 3 times the money. Because did you know that the average recruitment company only fills 1 job out of 5, but they work on them all? So that means they're only getting 1 fee for working 5 jobs. How much smarter would it be if clients found a good recruiter? So if Ben's a good recruiter, he's a specialist in UX design, take this job, you've got 2 weeks to fill it. You put 100% effort into that because you know you've got a 9 out of 10 chance of filling it. You haven't got me coming along to gazump you. And you'd be happy if all your jobs were that way, to charge a lower fee. So the irony is that clients who give out job orders in competition are pushing up the price, not down the price. See,
I think that's also another part to it as well. I was talking about the talent element of this, is that if I'm a recruiter and I get so much focus on one job or one sort of specialty, I'm far more likely to actually expand my search to find the right kind of person rather than narrowly going, okay, UX designer in 2 weeks, but I'm competing against 10 people, let's get the first person I find.
But you've hit the nail on the head. clients of recruitment companies who put orders out in competition are actually asking people to compete on speed. Now, let's say you needed a brain operation. Would you like to go to the surgeon who did it the quickest? Or the guy who did it the best? Or even, let's get less dramatic, somebody to cut your hair, or somebody to paint your house, or somebody to do your tax return. Why do we go in those cases and give the job to one person? When did you last give your tax returns to 4 accountants and say, hey, whoever comes back with first, I'll pay? I mean, it is absolute bullshit. We should find one good person, one good organisation, per job. I think it's no problem if a client says, I'm going to use Ben Recruitment for my UX jobs, I'm going to use Greg Recruitment for this, and you know what, I'm going to use Erin Recruitment for that senior job because she's better. But give that recruiter the time to do quality work, and as you say, to really comb the market and bring all their resources to bear. If you don't do that, all they'll do is become, and then it becomes actually laughably a self-fulfilling prophecy, because recruiters then compete on speed. They flick resumes, they don't do thorough work. Client goes, these recruiters are shit. Go and hire 4 more recruiters.
Exactly. And I think that's another one that I find interesting about that whole thing is that someone like me who gets a LinkedIn message once or twice a day going, hey, I think you've got this skill set that suits this. And I'm like, have you actually looked through my skill set, or have you just taken it based on the title of my role? Like, I get that, and often it's not the fault of the recruiter. It's not the fault of that person there, but they've been given that element of, you have to get me someone within a couple of days or a couple of weeks to interview. And it's even funnier when you get that interview with that candidate, they talk about the role, then the candidate goes and meets the client, and it's a completely different element because the client has given you a rushed brief, a rushed process that they want, and then they get to you and they're like, this is not the person we want. Well, you've just wasted 2 weeks of my time finding the right person. It's like,
it's interesting you say that, because what this creates is a race to the bottom. Now, you say it's not the recruiter's fault, and in a way, it's not, although
I'll say partially in a sense.
The fact is that if the recruiter doesn't have the ability to sell exclusivity and a partnership, then they compete on speed and price. And if you compete on speed and price in recruitment, I'll look at the camera and say, then you are on a slippery slope to recruiting hell. Because there's nowhere to go, and you can't do that quality work. The irony is, and this was actually jumping ahead to one of my other big BSs, and that is that, I'll just touch on it before we come at it logically, and that is that recruiters don't look after candidates. They want to, but the system drives poor service, which we'll come to later.
Well, I actually want to come back to that a little bit in terms of, we'll come to that in a second, but in the brief time that I spent in the recruitment industry, I felt like there were times where I was being trained to see everyone as a dollar sign, which I felt was a little bit frustrating. And then I see other companies that are doing it the opposite way, where it's like every person has a value that they can be bringing based on them, rather than the CV or something like that. I felt that was quite interesting, but the manager I had at the time, a lovely lady by the name of Liana Kupasani and Michael Page in the UK, she actually taught me about the nature of individual traits being really good to really focus on and taking the time. And I, being a naive recruiter, I was like, nah, don't worry, I can get it done quickly. Ended up not being as successful, that's why I'm here, instead of over there. So
it's good to be interviewed by a 2nd grade failed recruiter. Thanks, Ben.
Well, I mean, I could be a 3rd grade one as well.
Well, you probably.
I'm a bit better at video than I am at recruiting, I think, at this point, which is always good. Yeah. So you'd hope so, at least.
A good place for radio.
The only bloke who can have pimples and be on camera and be okay with it. All right. So with all that in mind, I'd like to come to sort of a solution here. Now, you've covered a lot in sort of one BS, a lot of topics. So let's go to the solution of, tell me how you think you would combat this element of, agencies having to be forced to race to the bottom, and also how, these talent acquisition teams are treating their recruitment teams.
Well, it's as with most complex problems in life, it's not an easy fix. But if you had to actually say how would you do it, I've been on a crusade trying to do that for 40 years. And if you've ever been to any of my stuff, any of the companies I run, etc., what we try to do is educate the recruiter to have the confidence and the articulation to sell to the client why it's in the client's interest to give the job exclusively to that recruiter. And that's the key, it's in the client's interest. So you're the client. Mr. Client, I want to handle this job for you exclusively so I can have time to do a thorough job. You won't have to have 20 recruiters spamming at you, just give them time. Obviously I've got to deliver, but if you can educate clients that it's actually better to give jobs exclusively and give people a time frame in which they can work, then the benefits will be much better service to the client. Potentially over time, lower fees, because if I'm getting paid 9 times out of 10 instead of 1 time out of 5,
you can drop
your fees. And also much better, incidentally, service to the candidates, who are often, left. You talk about being your Michael Page mentor. She's 100% right. If we can look beyond the resume, interview the person and find their talent, But how many recruiters have the time to do that when they're asked to race resumes to the client by 4 o'clock today to get it ahead of the guy across the road? It is a dysfunctional fuck up.
I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. And being on both sides and being a candidate in that particular realm, having had recruiters do that, there's nothing worse than feeling like you're not being treated the way you treat others in that sense. I find that, all right, so I totally agree. I think it's a massive BS problem, and I don't understand why anybody would not think that's the case. So
it's an irony though. I have sat opposite clients and asked them why they give orders out in competition, and their answers are always the same. One of these four, or always these four. I will get better service. Probably get worse service. I will get better candidates. No, you'll just get a larger number of the same candidates. And a couple of other reasons that they give. But the main one is actually that recruiters don't have the strength, the coaching, the belief to tell the clients, this is how I'll do it for you, and it'll be better for you. Then once they're given that chance, they need to deliver, right? You can't say to the client, give me the biscuits and not give anything back.
Yeah.
But once the client's seen the benefit, they won't go back because they'll see that it's saving time, money, and stress.
all right, so now we're moving on to BS number 2, and I'd like to sort of this second BS I find very intriguing. So one you run through.
Well, it's also something that's said about the industry, and it's said every day on LinkedIn, and some recruiters have come to believe it. And of course, there are elements of truth to it, but overall, it's built on a platform of total BS, and that is that recruiters don't care about candidates. That is patently untrue. Now, don't get me wrong, Ben. There are a lot of recruiters who give candidates bad service, but we need to understand a few things. First of all, it stems from the same issue as BS number 1, and that is because clients ask recruiters to compete on speed. All the things they want to do around candidates, they can't do because they've got to take shortcuts. I mean, do you think that recruiters come in on a Monday morning and have a meeting called, hey, how do we piss off our candidates meeting? They don't. They have the intention of doing well, but when a client says, get your resumes by this afternoon, and don't forget, you only get paid if you fill the job, people take shortcuts, and that lets candidates down. And there's no doubt that that happens. But I think what's not recognised is how much recruiters do for candidates.
Yeah, look, I'd like to kind of delve into that a little bit in the way of candidates. Candidates can also always have an element of, I'm doing you a favour by being your candidate. And you find that more and more with people who are like, in particular roles that are hard to find. And I know this for a fact because I've got a lot of friends in those sort of hard to reach spaces. And one thing I'd like to come to ask you about in this sense is, if I'm a candidate who's got 5 recruiters or 10 recruiters, working for me, and they go, okay, well, this guy doesn't care about me, he's not calling me 3 times, this guy's not caring about me, he's not giving me the job quick enough. What do you say to those candidates in this space that are going, well, actually, these guys do care about you, you're just, looking at different
recruiting's a bit like dating. You tend to get what you give, and if you are a good candidate who's playing the field with 10 recruiters, they will know that, and they may make the decision, consciously or unconsciously, that you're not worth the effort, because their chances of placing you are, by definition, 1 in 10. So it's actually smarter for a recruiter if they can find, for a candidate I should say, they can find a really good recruiter who they trust, who understands them, who's going to represent them in the market. It does a candidate no good for their resume to end on 10 times on the client's desk. It devalues them. So, and there's the other thing that you said there, which is quite true, that in a candidate short market, candidates are in demand, they feel somewhat precious, and their behaviour is reflected. But you got to remember that recruiters don't actually charge candidates fees.
No.
Now, I'm not for a minute suggesting that means the candidate doesn't deserve good service. They do. But let's just remember that the recruiter is doing a lot of work, unpaid, for the candidates, including finding them opportunities they can't find themselves, because a lot of opportunities in this city are never going to be advertised. And it's through word of mouth, or often good recruiters are getting them exclusively. So if you're not talking to that recruiter, you're not in the front. But they also, just think of the amount of time coaching a recruiter, coaching a candidate, preparing her for the interview, helping her to position why she was let go from that job, helping her to increase her confidence in the interview, market knowledge, salary information. All this, a lot of candidates sometimes forget, is all part of a good recruiter. Now, I know there are a lot of recruiters who do none of that, but there are a lot that do that all day long.
Well, it's the same, it's the iceberg metaphor, isn't it? It's like you can see 10% of the work they do, but 90% is behind the scenes. And I think that's another part to it, is that the recruitment industry gets a bad name for, people, let's say, throwing CVs at a wall and seeing what sticks, stuff like that. It's actually changed dramatically based on the nature of how the market's moved. You've got those candidates who feel like they're in a candidate short market. So what I would then ask the question of you of is that when it comes to a candidate care side of things, that 90%, behind the scenes, what can they do to convince the candidate that they're the right consultant for them?
Okay, yeah. So I will answer that question, but I just want to pick up on something else you said. The recruitment industry is a bad reputation, etc. There is something of a blindness from the general community, where people are happy to sit back and criticise the recruitment industry and recruiters blindly and viciously and in public because they didn't return a call or some such thing, which is irritating. And yet here we have in this city bankers who are ripping off their customers in a strategic and concerted and deceptive way, actually charging dead people's estates for insurance. And we've got lawyers defending criminals that they know are guilty. And we hold up those professions as, what is going on? I didn't return your call, I'm sorry, I'm really busy, and I'm a dickhead. And yet here's the CEO of a bank and he's a banker. It is ludicrous. It's completely unfair.
Do you think it's a barrier to entry? I mean, me and Erin had a conversation about this. I think, actually, to your point, my sister's a lawyer, and she worked her arse off to get where she is, and she works hard, and she's very concerned about the nature of it. But it's the same thing. It's like you're holding up industries because you had to go to uni for 5 years, you have to be 10 years to pay your dues to then be able to get to a level where you can make decisions. Whereas in an industry like recruitment, or say in the tech startup world like that I'm in, that it's a quicker way to kind of work your way up, and yet somehow recruiters are given this bad name of, hey, you fell into recruitment, you've only learned your craft for 6 or 7 months, but you're holding up people that are bankers and lawyers probably because they make a lot of money because of what they do, and they've got a societal benefit of being the people that you were told as a kid you should be.
Yeah, exactly. Look, and there's no doubt that don't get me wrong, the majority of lawyers and bankers are hard-working, smart people who play with a straight bat. But as an industry, I reckon they've done, banking primarily, there's more about the epidemic problems in that industry than there is in recruitment. You're right about recruitment in that there are low barriers to entry and there's a lot of people that come through the system and they can do some damage in their first 12 months. But a good recruiter who's been in a business for a period of time, I reckon, I'd hold, in terms of my knowledge of the recruitment industry and my contribution to what I do, I'd hold it up against any banker or lawyer in their industry because I've had the time to do it and the will. But to come back to your question, what could a recruiter do? First of all, a recruiter's got to be much more selective about who they invest time with. Now that sounds cruel. Truth is, we're not a social service. We can't help everybody get a job. So we need to very quickly screen out those that we can, screen in those that we can, and those that we can't, screen out with empathy, advice, and send them on the way to somewhere else where they can be helped. But the problem is that a lot of recruiters allow everyone to apply, everyone's expectations to arrive, and they can't deal with the volume. Particularly with modern technology, job boards and all the rest of it. People can, I can sit at home and apply for 50 jobs. Now I'm waiting for 50 people to get back to me. It's not going to happen. So recruiters have to be more selective, spend more time with each individual, coach them on what they're going to do for that individual, and then ask for, in return, certain behaviours. So, Ben, I am going to only represent you to these 3 companies with your recruitment. Let me coach you on how to present that little issue you had when you left that company and went there. All I need from is that you communicate with me. You tell me where you're up to in the job. Whatever, okay, I'm giving you a short version. But build that relationship, work closely with them, show the candidate, just as with the client, show the candidate why it's in his or her interest to invest in you, rather than to treat the recruiter as just a resume flicking service.
Yeah, that is so darn true, is the fact that what you'll find with people, and going to back on the original point to now, is that people won't give recruiters a chance, or they won't, they'll feel like it's a stigma to work with them based on that sort of thing. But in retrospect, you have much more of an opportunity to grow yourself as a candidate working with a recruiter than you do just by applying for these roles. And there's nothing that stands out more than that is that you won't get feedback from these big firms that you apply for because they'll just go, sorry, not there. But if you work with a recruiter the right way, they can go, okay, you may be weak in this area, but you're strong in this one. Let's focus on that.
I mean, candidates must remember that increasingly, whether we like it or not, a lot of screening by corporates is done by AI and technology. And so you're going to be screened out because you haven't got some little tick in some box. But if I'm representing you to the client, and I've got a good relationship with that client, I can say, yeah, look, I know Ben, it looks as though he's had 3 jobs in a row in a short period of time. But in actual fact, this one he had to move because his wife was promoted. And I can explain it. I get you the interview, you shine, you get the job. I made that happen. And that's because I had a relationship with you. I knew you had the skills. But if it's all done by tech, and that's why I feel that the third-party agency recruitment industry has still got a role for some time to come, because the fact is that there is still nuance. And AI can only work where it's binary, right? Where there's
yes
a
or
choice.
No,
Might be yes, no, double no, whatever. But where there is nuance, and there's always nuance. No job spec cannot be finessed. I mean, how many times has a client said, "I'll only take someone with a degree from Melbourne University," and 2 months later they hired somebody from Adelaide University because we convinced them to.
And that's another. I think there's another part to this which I'm curious about is. I fear there may be a lull in the recruitment industry where you'll start to see AI be so heavily reliant on that then a company will hire people based on that AI, and then they'll realise that person wasn't right for me. I have to go back to my old ways, and so they waste a year, 2 years, 3 years of their recruiting cycle based solely on the fact that they're unable to, they're like, oh, my pride is getting the head of me. Like, I'm a talent acquisition agent who doesn't work with recruiters, whatever it may be. It's up to them to kind of decide, are we still keeping that relationship going? Because recruitment is all about that one-to-one personality, being able to conversate, and like for what we do at Video My Job and utilising video for that, it's the same thing. You've got a person who's got a personality. You're not just a name on a sheet. So that to me is a big issue. So with all that in mind, what would be a favourable solution? It might be a complex one, but what do you think would be a step to take here to improve that?
Well, I think it takes senior people in corporates, talent acquisition and CEOs, etc., to understand that AI is a tool, and machine learning and automation are all tools that are ideal for shifting the grunt work out of recruitment, but they don't deal with the nuance. And you talk about relationships, and a smart talent acquisition person, even if that person is tasked with the job of cutting down recruitment agency fees, needs to understand that the ultimate job is to win the battle for the best talent. And if it's so true that if it becomes apparent that a recruiter has access to talent, you need to use them and you need to build a relationship with them. Don't make an enemy of them. That's one of the dumbest sort of byproducts of what's happened in the industry is, and it's not as bad as maybe it was, is the kind of talent acquisition versus third-party recruiters. The smart ones use them as allies. They still can recruit themselves, they can still introduce technologies and other things, but time has proven that the recruitment industry is not being wiped out anytime soon, and there's a reason for that, and that is because you can't find the best talent without a third-party agent doing it.
I put my hands on it and go, look, I totally understand that, and as someone who has never been in talent acquisition but has been in recruitment, I can understand why some people may be hesitant to jump with recruiters, but it's once again, if you're not getting access to the right talent and it takes losing that talent to understand you've got to work with them, maybe that's the only way that some people can learn that.
Well, as you see, the irony is, and I'm not going to pick on talent acquisition people because recruiters are pulling to blame, But if you've got a talent acquisition person who says, I don't want to waste time on recruiters because they don't understand me. Oh, but I need their help. I'm going to flick them a resume, an email, and attached to which will be a job description. Recruiter says, can I come and see you? No. Right? So the recruiter can't get to see the decision maker, can't
see the environment,
qualify the job spec, understand. So they send resumes and they're not the right match. And the talent acquisition says, so I told you so, that recruiter doesn't understand.
Yeah.
So it happens every day. Mate, that's going to happen 100 times in the city today.
Yeah, that's definitely right. I mean, I think one of the other parts to that is that first barrier you put up, you're starting off that relationship on a negative footing immediately. And so as a recruiter going like, saying, well, this person doesn't want to meet with me, what the hell am I supposed to do? Well, how am I supposed to know them? How am I supposed to get them? How am I supposed to know what the environment's like? Because I have a story when I was in recruitment, I had a lady, fantastic, bubbly, personality, and she went into this business I was recruiting for, and I hadn't had the chance to meet them. And she went in there and she came back and she's like, that was probably the most boring place I've ever been, I will never fit in there. And I was like,
right.
Okay, well,
You should have known that.
Should have known that, yeah, that's the problem. So you learn these things, but look, I honestly agree. I think a lot of the parts you were kind of describing in terms of the nature of that relationship is so heavily important.
It is. It's two-sided, obviously, and I want to emphasise this because there might be tons of acquisition people who watch this. It's equally true that a lot of recruiters have fallen so much into the paradigm of the way they operate that even if they don't ask the client to go and see it. As soon as they get a job description, the first thing they do is send resumes. And that just dumbs the process down to a resume flicking service. Then the client gets inappropriate resumes, and so the cycle.
Yeah, it's like that cycle of sadness in there. So,
Sadness.
like I totally get it. I'm in total agreement.
But like the All Blacks, I'd say.
Look, we are three-time champions, mate.
Well, actually, so South Africa out of less World Cups.
Yeah, you guys didn't do the '89 World Cup, did you? Was it '89 one?
The first one, 87 or 91.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then 195.
So you have a better strike rate.
Yeah.
But we have more World Cups.
No, 3 each.
Do you have 3?
Yeah.
95, 2007.
And one a few months ago.
Yeah, good point. I would.
Don't cut this out.
I would bring up the rugby championship. We keep winning that. So
Who won it last year?
you guys did, obviously.
So your argument's going really, really well. Let's get back to talent acquisition.
All I know is that I'm a Hurricanes fan and also a Rebels fan, and now the Tars lost to the Rebels, which is the one thing I'm happy about.
It's a very, very, very small piece of cake.
I know, it's great, isn't it? It's fantastic. All right, cool. So that's BS number 2. So let's move on to your third BS today. What do we got?
Okay, change of pace. This is something that is often said by recruiters.
Okay.
And it's often said by people outside recruitment too. And if you're a recruiter and you ever say this again, give yourself a swift uppercut and don't. And it's very glib. It's, recruitment, it's not rocket science, you know. That is the stupidest thing you can say because
You're dumbing down your own.
You are demeaning. And the subtext of that, which is not very sub, it's right there, is you don't have to be very smart to be in recruitment.
Yeah.
Let me tell you this. Outside there are 12 recruiters. I would bet my life on me taking those 12 recruiters. You go and hire 12 rocket scientists and try and turn them into recruiters, I will win. Because those rocket scientists might be the most genius people in the world, but they could never do recruitment because they're analytical, they're not influencers. I'm generalising, you might find
that's a challenge for a rocket scientist. Anybody in my network is a rocket scientist?
You know, I feel so strongly about it that maybe we should change the saying. If something's really, really easy, we should say it's not recruitment, you know? Because recruitment is hard. To be good at recruitment, it takes a complex mix of smarts, emotional intelligence, influencing skills, listening skills, questioning skills, speed, urgency, and incredibly strong resilience, and a wide variety of other things we don't need to go into today. But I can tell you, so I would beg you to stop saying that because it is extremely difficult to be a long-term successful at this job. And
I'm a testament to that. I lasted 4 months. So.
well, maybe you could be a rocket scientist.
No, definitely not that.
So I would stop saying that. I mean, I thought we're not even. What does it even mean? We're not building rockets. Let me say this to you. Going out onto the MCG on Boxing Day and making 100 before lunch, it's not rocket science.
No.
Can you do it?
No, I mean, on Cricket 07 I could, but not in real life.
Yeah,
So.
I can't do it either.
Yeah.
And even making a 1-hour speech with no notes in front of 150 people, 99% of people can't do that. It's not rocket science. So saying something's not rocket science to indicate that it's easy is stupid.
It's taking literally the most extreme argument and saying, like you were saying, it's not the legal profession, it's not banking, it's not video production, right? It's the same thing. You're taking the most extreme element and making that your benchmark.
It's suggesting that intellect, complex intellect, is the only benchmark of doing something difficult. As I said, scoring 100 runs before, that is okay. Yes, it's an athletic skill, but it's also concentration, taking a huge amount of resilience to get there. As I said, to make a speech in front of a lot of people, to counsel somebody off a ledge who's about to commit suicide. Well, it's not rocket science. Is it important?
Absolutely.
Is it difficult? Is it stressful? Of course it is. That's recruitment too. So to say it's not rocket science is absolutely dumb. It is a very difficult thing to do, and very few people can do it well long term.
I can totally attest to this. I've trained thousands of recruiters on how to utilize video, and I understand the plight of that. But there is nothing more frustrating than anybody who will go into an industry and say, "Oh, this seems easy." Because I can tell you for a fact that recruitment is the hardest job that I've ever had, and I've worked for some pretty tough companies and done some pretty cool things. But what I find most interesting about your point is that recruiters are saying that themselves.
Yeah, they do.
So they're setting their own feet up for failure. And I think there's nothing, because the problem I find with that is that I'm the kind of guy that believes hard work and diligence and dedication will lead you to be more successful in that role. It won't lead you, it's not everything, you do need to have a little bit of talent in what you're kind of doing, but it's the element of going, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're giving yourself a mental mindset of going, it's not rocket science. So the moment you fail the first time, oh shit, well I'm not really great at this thing that's really done.
Well, typically then they say, well, this is not a real industry and it's Mickey Mouse to justify. I mean, when people say it's not rocket science, what they really mean is it's not intellectually hard to explain, and it's not. But it's not intellectually hard to explain how to make 100 runs. You just hit that ball to the fence. What the hell? Let's explain. Just do that 30 times and you'll be there. So, explaining it's one thing. Doing it, it's not difficult for me to explain how you can give a speech to 100 to 1,000 people for an hour. You understand it, but for you to do it, or me to do it, it's tremendously hard.
You've got to write the script, you've got to get yourself prepared for it, you've got to basically memorize it before you then go up on stage, and then you get up there and you miss 1 or 2 points.
You've got to have charisma, you've got to be able to read the audience, and not only that, you normally have to have a lot of experience to deliver something that's relevant, content that's relevant to that audience. So I mean, the point is made that I think you're right. Recruiters shouldn't say that, but because they're dumbing down their own industry. But more than that, we need to understand that it is actually a very difficult thing to do well. It takes a really unusual combination of skills. That's why so few people are very, very good at it long term.
And I think that's a big one. And to testament to some of the people, you know, Erin Devlin is a good example of this, being in the industry this long and has been successful for the same fact that she's clearly diligent, works hard, but also knows that whilst there is some very hard parts to it, the more you work on it, the better that you will come. And it's just that element. I think that in itself is important. So rather than kind of delving into how deep bad things can get, let's turn to a solution side of things. So if you're a recruiter saying this to yourself, saying it's not rocket science, what is the solution to that particular level of thinking?
I think if you're a recruiter, you need to first of all resign yourself to the fact that you have entered a very tough profession. Accept that you're going to have a lot of disappointments. You're going to have a lot of rough days. Also understand that it's the most exhilarating job in the world when you get it right. We basically do a good thing. I've got most of my mates my age, obviously, they're lawyers, bankers, all the sorts of people I've spoken. They sometimes tease me about being in recruitment, and I say, mate, you're a lawyer. You get up every morning and you defend a criminal you know is guilty. And you're a banker. You probably are a fucking criminal as far as I know. And what do? I find people jobs and help companies grow.
I think looking at all the positives, so me being a very sentimental guy, I look at this and go, you've helped a family. Not just the person, you've helped a family, you've helped an extended family because that person has gone and taken a job they like and a salary that they, helps their family improves their lives, whatever it may be. It's not about the individual person you've placed, it's about everything around them as well.
So we have a huge impact.
Yeah.
And so there's all that part of it, which we can be proud of, and we should be. Then the second part of it is that it is a tremendously satisfying job if you are able to use the human element because you can influence outcomes. Like the example I gave where you've got some skills but you can't get through the AI. I talk to a client, get you an interview, they love you, they hire you. Well, I made that happen now, not in an arrogant way, but I can lie in bed at night and say, he got that job because I did that thing. And we make money. So I think the starting point is, Chris, first of all, understand it's tough. B, understand it's good. Understand it can be highly satisfying and lucrative. I'll put that last.
Yep.
But then understand you've got to work at the skills. Just as that guy made 100 before lunch, looked as though it was easy. It took him 10 years, 20 years. He started when he was 7. And he practiced, was dropped, hard work, worked at his weaknesses, and eventually got to that level. But that's the so. I don't know my analogies or maybe sport, but that's the analogy.
Well, it's like the same. There's like two, just from that particular analogy. I love this. There's the Manish Lavashan one and the Tom Blunder one. The
correct pronunciation of that word is Lavaskachni.
Like I can give it a crack, but I still can't say my own name properly. I'm Kiwi. But I think he came in because of a concussion. He came in because there was an injury, and he took his opportunity, which is it. Yeah. And I think another one, which is Tommy Blundell, and shout out to Tom. I went to school with him and played rugby with him back in the day. He's 28, toiling away. He makes 100 on his debut against West Indies, and he's not back in the team again. And then you go, okay, he's got to toil again. So there's going to be roadblocks that are put up, and I think that's the biggest part of your conversation here is there are going to be roadblocks. There are going to be days where people say no to you. In an industry like recruitment, a lot of people will say no. They'll go, sorry, we don't want to work with recruiters or stuff like that. But it's about that perseverance because you'll end up getting a bigger thing out of it. So that to me is huge.
Yeah, look, I think that's right. And I think, just to tie up this, we said, don't say recruitment is rocket science. Do accept that it's hard. Do accept that it's complex. But then say, I will break it down piece by piece and I'll improve my skills. I need to improve my skills around screening, around negotiating fees, around going on a client visit, around promoting myself on video. There's all little components that you can work at. And just as a sportsman or an artist or anyone else, you work at it. And in recruitment, unfortunately, people often go for 6 months, they get a bit of success and they go, tick, I'm a recruiter.
Yeah.
I know when you're being a recruiter.
No, I understand. So look, I totally agree. I think all three of those are pretty intense for me, so I totally agree. Alright, so we usually have 3 BSs, and usually I agree with all of them because I wouldn't have to guess off if they wouldn't know exactly what they're talking about, which is fantastic. But you've got a 4th one, which I'm going to find interesting here.
Well, the 4th one is a bit of career advice I used to give years ago, and I don't do it now, but everyone gives it. And in fact, you see memes of this on Instagram, and it goes something like this. Never give up. Knock on 100 doors, and knock on 101. Fall down 50 times, and people consider this to be
But don't get up. Don't get up.
good advice. It is the biggest lot of BS I've ever heard. If you're doing something at the best of your ability and it's not working, give the fuck up.
What's the definition of insanity?
Exactly, that's right. Do the same thing and expect a different result. So what I'm saying is, and I've given up many times, I've opened offices, hasn't worked. I've tried various things that haven't worked. I mean, I suppose in the end you don't give up, but what you really need to do is cut the ego and say, you know what, this plan, this dream I believed in is not working. You never give up on the dream, you give up on the tactics. Change the tactics, pivot, recalibrate, think again, and then go again. And my biggest advice to people who want a long, successful career is give up lots of times. Change, and go to where the success is. I mean, and we see it in recruitment, right? We see people around this city and every city I go to, they will be saying to their recruiters, I know you've made 100 cold calls today, and you haven't had a single success, but never give up. Give up.
Yeah.
Do something different. Make warm calls. Use social media. Use video. Do something different. The goal is to sell recruitment services to clients, or the goal is to get client meetings. But if that tactic's not working, just repeating more of it is driving that recruiter into the dust.
Oh, someone who works for a company that tried to disrupt the nature of recruitment and how we do it. I couldn't agree more, and I think the biggest part to me is this statement which always comes up, which is basically on the lines of, he didn't call you back? Right, call him again, just tell him like that. So the first BS I did was with a guy called Graham Hawkins, you may have heard of him, a fantastic guy, works in social selling. His exact argument's the same thing, is that old school ways of selling are dead.
That was right.
Yeah, exactly. So calling the same person 20 times, all you're gonna do is piss them off. So this is what I find interesting about the recruitment side of things and things like that. The companies that are being far more social savvy and delivering more education first up are the ones that are ending up with more success.
Sure.
And what I get really frustrated with, especially in the video space, is when customers talk to us and go, I don't think I need to do that. And you go, okay, competitor A, B, and C are going to try it out for you instead, and you'll be left trying the old school way, which no longer works. So what my question to you would be is that if I'm a recruiter and I'm knocking on 50 doors and number 49 works, that's still 1 out of 50, right?
And you won't be in recruitment 6 months later because you would have driven yourself into the dust because it's just not sustainable.
Exactly.
So, I don't know who this Hawkins guy is, but he's absolutely right. And I've got, if you read my blog, in my book, there's a whole chapter on social selling in there. Yeah, Savage Truth, best recruitment book I've ever written.
Well, no, because I do a lot of work with Graham, and it's the exact thing he says, which is, and this is something that, as a millennial, right, we should be grasping this with both hands, is that use other avenues to stand out and really show your expertise.
Yeah.
And I think, video is one of them, don't get me wrong, I'll promote the video to the counselling one, but there's blogs. There's also, webinar opportunities. There's speaking. There's networking opportunities.
There's heaps of things. You can put out content on LinkedIn. You can like people's stuff on LinkedIn. You can share. You can connect people. There's so much that. Well, we introduced this at Firebrand in the early 2010 onwards, just as social media was emerging. We didn't have the. It's a long story, but we didn't have the money to market in traditional way, so we used social media. Now that sounds like an obvious thing, but in 2010, that's 10 years ago. And that's when I started the Savage Truth blog, but that was all designed to grow my company. Since then it's evolved into my own services now. But the idea there was to create online relationships that we then converted into offline relationships. And it's far, far more effective.
Absolutely. And another part to it is you reach far more people and far more eyes by utilising social channels or social delivery than you do by trying to kind of call every man on the block. And another part to this is what I find really intriguing. There's a really fantastic recruiter called Carrie Callahan in Auckland who, when she makes her posts, it's all in her language. And I find that the most intriguing part is that some recruiters will still recruit or post stuff online and they'll use social, but they're posting in this old school style that their business has told them they have to do because they That's a good point.
Look, that's one of the secrets to building a personal brand, is that is authenticity. But people often stop me and say, I love your blog, I'm like, oh, great. And they say, well, I don't actually agree with much of what you say, but I know it's your opinion, and I know it's you speaking, because I've spoken to you and you speak like that. And in this day and age of false news and finessing, and we can't trust anything, people value authenticity, and they value insights, and they value people telling the truth. So that is just the starting point for personal brand.
Yeah. Well, personal brand is actually a point that you've actually kind of raised here without even kind of starting off on it, is if every recruiter looked the same and you paint them with the same brush, you're going to expect the same results. So, but unless you start to work with them directly and understand more about their experience, and you've touched on this plenty today, is that the personal branding of a recruiter comes down to your personality outside the recruitment industry. What do you do? What makes your hobbies? What makes you smile and makes you tick? Is it like sport for us? Sport, rugby, cricket. How can I incorporate that into my current role and conversations and whatnot? But what I'd pose to you here is that what is something that those who are afraid to start their personal brand side of things, they're afraid to get on camera or start running blogs, what can they do to take the first step?
Look, I think that's a big issue, and it actually rests, ironically, more with the leadership of recruitment companies to train people, support them. I mean, people to people is a good example where, I'm on the board of Video My Job, and I go in there and I see that people to people is often one of the highest ranking views.
Yeah.
But that's because they've really worked with their staff. They train them, they coach them, they set them KPIs. They didn't just say, hey, here's this tool we will Video My Job. It's going to work for you. Good luck.
Yeah.
They worked with someone whose self-esteem, or confidence, I should say, not self-esteem, was not to be in front of camera, and start with something short, start with something on a topic the person's really confident with. That's the first thing I'd say. And then it's 10 seconds of courage. And by that, like with most things in life, once you start, you can get through it.
Well, that's another part. So not to go on to the Video My Job much thing, this is all about kind of outside of that. But with our tool, what I really find with people is that with video, there is a stump, there's what I like to call the big rock you blast through, or the tiny little stone that you trip over. And often it's the tiny little stone. I don't know how I look on camera, or I don't know if I'll be confident enough. That's fine. You're okay. It's all about being you and being authentic. And I think talking about the recruiters here, there's a couple of really good ones. To really shout out Amy Burton and Mary Savova. Those two make fantastic content when they're actually on camera. But they may have started with not being as confident. But it takes time.
They did, I can tell you.
Well, there you go. So it takes time to really master this and be good. But another part to it is that if you are afraid of creating content, anything like that, the first step is to try. And I think I make a lot of goofy content and stuff like that, but that's my personality, that's who I am. But when I train recruiters on utilising video content, I always ask them and go, what makes you special? What makes you you? What do you bring to the table? And as a good example, the team at DFP, is that there? Cool. As a good example, the team at DFP Recruitment, we did a session with them, and 3 of their team are now making a series where they do cooking as well as CV tips. So they talk about some cooking tips and some CV tips, and they bring that together. It's a fantastic idea.
I hope it's not Robert from Stockholm.
No, it's not Robert.
That man can't cook.
I imagine he can't. Right, good with cars, bad with food. But so that also then leads me to the last sort of question about this part when it comes to personal branding. You've been in the industry for 40 years. You've got the know-how. You know how things work, and you've had the experience. Someone new coming in that's new to recruitment. How can they get to the level of sounding like an expert in the industry? Because what a lot of people are afraid of is sounding like I don't know what I'm talking about. Someone can challenge me.
Yeah. So I might have been around a long time, but I have to every day keep sharpening the axe because I had this conversation with you. I've got to be on the ball about the topic, and the topic's now social selling and video content. Well, I'm not a millennial, right? I had to learn it. I had to reinvent myself as a digital native. But the advice I'd give people, the specific answer to your question is, even a 6-month recruiter has an insight that is valuable. And I had a conversation with a recruiter the other day, and it was actually not about video, but it was about putting a status update on LinkedIn. And she said, exactly, what have I got to add? So I said to her, tell me this. What's the biggest issue for you in the marketplace? She said, oh, that's easy. Clients who are desperate for talent are taking too long to make a decision and they're missing out on the best talent. I said, there's your insight. She said, but everyone knows that. I said, no, you know that because you are a recruiter on the inside. That's your status update. Write 2 paragraphs or 1 paragraph about how great candidates are going to clients who do a thorough process but who move fast. And are you confident to write that? She said, yeah, I know that's true because I've had a lot of clients lose. Well, write about that. So encourage the person to write about a very simple insight that they know is true and they're confident because they can defend it. You know, what people are nervous about, understand there's a lot of trolls in the internet's full of unpleasant people. They don't want people hammering them, embarrassing them, etc.
That's the big part.
So start with something that is non-controversial, helpful, and incontrovertible. In other words, you know it to be true, right? So something like, you know, I could help, you know, my clients would get better candidates if they move faster. It's hardly going to create a sort of shitstorm of trolling, so you should be fine, and it's helpful. And they'll usually get some good feedback, some banter, and so just start there. That would be my advice.
I mean, and it takes a wee while as well. So I put out 2 videos a week, or one or 2 videos a week, and I make a lot of content, and I'm not getting. LinkedIn isn't really the place for trolls. Like, it's not really the area because Facebook and Instagram, they can hide behind a blank thing. But I find the point regarding this recruiter, what have I got to offer? And they often question themselves when in fact they do have an insight they don't even know about. So unlocking that is the hardest part.
They do have, I mean, even as I said, you know, there was an example, but there's other insights, you know. Salaries for payroll clerks have gone up this year. Candidates, we're finding that more of our clients are giving candidates flexible working hours. I mean, there's stacks of stuff we get from the market that is actually interesting.
There's so much you can learn without even knowing that you can be an expert in it. Like, you know, I started off in video. I wasn't really a video expert. Been here 3 years now, and I can wholeheartedly say I've got insights into video that most people don't have. Of course, which is fun. So look, I think that's going to end us today. We've gone through a lot of great topics, which I really appreciate you taking the time to go through. So here's the thing. With ThisIsBS, the good thing about it is that you can learn more about Greg's side of things. So where can they go to find more about this?
Oh right, well, you've got the book.
Actually, where can you find the book? Where can you buy the book?
You go to my website, gregsavage.com.au, gregsavage.com.au. There's hundreds of blogs, there's podcasts, there's many videos, all produced by my very good friend at Video My Job. And you can buy the book. You can also see my speaking tours. I'm not sure when this is being published, but I've got a big tour in March, which is my last ever big one. And you can go to that, or not. Not really too concerned at this stage of my life, but I'd love you to go and read the book.
Well, I think if I'm going to say, as someone who's seen you speak and then kind of, you know, been a part of, you know, knowing you for a good part of 3 years now, if you are a recruiter and you want to learn more and want to learn from an expert who knows what the hell they're talking about, there's right there for you. And I think another part to it is when people hear you speak, the Savage Sales series I went to, it really interesting. I wasn't in the recruitment industry, and I went and listened to it, and I was like, damn, there's some really good stuff I can take into my own stuff. So if you have the chance, go through the website, take a look. If you want to know more about that, I actually put some links up here depending on what platform you're on. So LinkedIn up here, YouTube down here. If you know more about Video My Job and what Greg's talked about in terms of video content as a recruitment agency, my details are up there. Feel free to reach out to me. But as for now, I really appreciate you taking the time, but let's do this. What's the one last thing you want this viewer to take away from this conversation today?
Oh, well, I would say if you're in the recruitment industry, be proud of what you do. Deliver value wherever you can and guard your reputation, because your reputation is the only thing you own. So, and your reputation is made up of those little moments of truth when you interact with clients, candidates or colleagues. Ask yourself the question, did I enhance my reputation or did I let myself down? And I think that's good advice for recruitment and for life.
Yeah, well, I'm totally agree. So look, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. And
can we circle back to the Rugby World Cup and who won that?
We could, but we could focus more on that Cricket World Cup where
you lost as well.
We lost on 4s. So New Zealand aren't having a great time of it right now.
I believe you've got a good netball team.
We have a great netball team. We also have great rowers who are fantastic.
I tell you what you do have, very nice Pinot Noir.
Oh,
that's one good thing.
Oh, we certainly do. I drank far too much of it on Valentine's Day and embarrassed myself heavily. So why not? Thanks for your time, mate. Really appreciate it. And if you want to know more, details are up there or down there. Thanks for your time.
All right.
Awesome.